why it's called Hicks?
No.
Do you want
I
to
did
know?
wonder why it was projected on the wall over
The
there.
word Hicks, and it's a Hicks bar. Everyone thinks it's like it's our can bar, and for foreign cans of beer and the old Sapporos and shit. And the other two bars are themed around. There's the Kim Philby bar is the main bar, and the Gay Traitor is really the Sir Anthony Blunt bar, but the Sir Anthony Blunt bar was a bit blunt, so we call it the Gay Traitor. Hicks, interestingly enough, I know we're being a bit deep here, but Hicks was Guy Burgess's code name.
Oh, right.
The third of the great British upper class public schoolboy traitors. So it's themed around the great comedians of the 20th century.
Well, the only thing I've found out about this bar so far is that nobody comes here, from all the people I've spoken to.
They do actually. This is quite a trend. Hicks has a periods of being trendy. From about 9 months ago to about 4 months ago, this is where the trendy would gather. It's become untrendy now, and it's just the gangs and stuff like that, but it has its periods of being trendy.
I must say I feel mightily comfortable here, but that's partly to do with the fact I'm on this side of the bar.
And you're a natural bartender, right?
I know, very natural. Actually, my mother was a bartender all her life, yes. What was I going to say to you?
Yeah, part of the reason... He's talking about his mother now, this is getting really serious.
We are getting psycho something. Yeah. Part of the reason that we came was that I knew you were going to court on Monday, but in fact you're not now, apparently.
No, we go to court January the 7th now. It does get delayed a lot.
And is that something you're optimistic or pessimistic about? And what are the reasons you're going to court, actually, before we...
I didn't know we were going to talk about this. In fact, we're not going to talk about this.
Okay, we don't have to talk about it.
We're not going to talk about this because I know that we've done a lot of work to keep the club open, which may be successful, and one of the biggest things we've done is George Carmen QC, the man who dealt with Ken Dodd and the rest of it. One of the first things he did was to say, if you want to keep this club open, then get that guy to keep his mouth shut. And that's me. So I have kept my mouth shut, and I know it's been appreciated on many sides of the fence. So I'm going to keep my mouth shut a little longer, if that's all right with you.
Absolutely, absolutely. I was talking to Stephen from New Order earlier, and I was asking him whether he ever envisaged that this club in Manchester would become a universally known.
And what did he say as one of the owners of the club? What did he say?
He said, I wish I'd never been involved in it. No, of course he didn't. He said...
He means that. He
probably does.
No, we all do. We all wish, I remember Barney at some meeting a few years ago saying, someone said, but Barney, let's face it, I mean, if you had, it's like that thing, If I Could Murder My Wife, that movie, if you had a button on your chair and you could press it, and the Hacienda does not and would not ever have existed, would you, you wouldn't press that button, would you, Barney? And Barney's like looking around for something to hit. It was a nightmare. I mean, it was a nightmare for all of us. I don't think anyone realizes the fact that it put enormous intellectual, emotional, and financial strain on all the companies. We ran it very badly in the early 80s. It lost silly amounts of money.
Why did you run it badly? I mean,
we were inexperienced, and we thought we were cleverer than we were. We'd gone from nothing to a big business, and we thought we were very, very clever. I still think we are very, very clever, but we certainly got this one wrong. At that time, we ran before we could crawl, and it caused a lot of stress for us all.
But you're running now. You're running now.
No, we're not actually. No, I mean.
Well, you are. You are. Factory Records and Hacienda. I mean.
Yeah, sure. But the Hacienda has been the centre of the world, and it's been the most exciting place from 1988 to about the middle of 1989 or middle of 1990. We're now at the end of 1990, and the last 4 months hasn't been great.
No.
It hasn't been great. I can tell you. I mean, Saturday nights
are great. But it curtailed my very neat segue into my next question.
Well, I'm terribly sorry, but truth is all important, isn't it?
It is.
It's tough. It's had to be tough to deal with the drug culture problems that we face. That's been tough. We've now got to, deal with it again. Life is a constant struggle. Have you noticed that?
I have. And
so
on that
I'm trying to get you into your next question.
No, but on that subject, how irksome do you find that fact that it's perfectly? I mean, with the program that we are both involved in at this very moment, we're not allowed to talk about drugs specifically, and yet we're allowed to be surrounded by alcohol, and I'm allowed to smoke. Is that an irksome notion in your mind? Yeah.
It's always been outrageous. Yes, it's completely outrageous. And Western European culture and its attitude to narcotics has always been completely outrageous.
Yeah, and probably something we shouldn't go into.
And something we shouldn't go into until because I've got to keep my mouth shut. But no, it is a kind of a joke. And it's funny, I made the joke at the beginning about the fact that here I am, but I don't really drink very much. And from an early age at school, I've always kind of despised alcohol. I got drunk once when I was 14. Was it an adult, or 13, I was at an adult Christmas party. The next morning I woke up and thought, did I behave like that? I mean, Chaucer has this line that alcohol is the very sepulchre of man's wit and his discretion. And it is the very sepulchre of man's wit and his discretion, and I'm someone who's always valued wit and discretion. Not so much discretion, but certainly wit. And I find alcohol the most ridiculous drug of them all. You know, I mean, if Islam has one thing right, most certainly, it's that, you know, if you're going to stop something, you stop this.
Yeah.
And it's always been a ridiculous thing that we've had to run this.
It's the quirk
this
of
temple.
historical fate.
We've had to run this temple by selling drugs.
Yeah.
And I hope Whitbreads aren't watching this, because Whitbreads have been very nice to us over the years, and we do love the brewers. And however, of course, it's absolutely, always has been ridiculous.
Well, the question I was aiming at earlier on was, you've lived in Manchester all your life. You're born in Manchester.
No, I wasn't actually.
You're born in Salford.
In Salford, and it's funny that in the old days we'd always say, no, I'm not from Manchester. Where are you from? From Salford. But really the Salford-Manchester thing, you know, in we Salfordians' minds has rather dissipated in the last 5 or 6 years. We're just bandwagon jumpers, you see.
Yeah. But what I specifically wanted to know was, I mean, the first time I ever saw you was on So It Goes, and the first time you became publicly a known person. But what was life in Manchester like before punk? I mean, immediately before punk.
Immediately before punk.
Immediately before So It Goes.
Immediately before punk and So It Goes. Well, life in the whole of Britain immediately before So It Goes. Life in the whole of Britain in the spring of 1976 was extremely dull. As I remember it, the only live music, only interesting music coming out of was the New Country, the only time we ever had New Country, which was coming out of Austin, Texas, and that was quite interesting. But the rest of it, it was in a very, very awful state. I mean, Manchester, the interesting thing in Manchester consisted of one group at that point for me. Sad Cafe were a good pop group, I suppose, but it was Alberto's y los Trios Paranoias.
Yeah.
Remember Alberto's y los Trios? And they were my entry. I came back from London, I mean 2 years at London and 3 years at university. I came back here, and you know, I worked for Granada, I'm a television, that's my job, but I didn't mix socially. And I found my world with this bunch, the Albertos, and still today I'm working with a drummer, Bruce, who's my partner and a drummer in the Drotty column. So there was just the Albertos, and the Albertos themselves had grown out of Greasy Bear. And here we're getting to the heart of Manchester. I mean, that really, we had Freddie and the Dreamers, didn't we, in '63, which, you know, we wear shorts. What a great one that was.
Pre-madness, madness.
Oh, boy, absolutely, you know, I mean, yeah, I mean, you must have been aware of Freddie and the Dreamers. We then had that great period with the Hollies, and I mean, I never thought Peter Noone was that great, but the songs, Herman Hermit songs, we did develop. Manchester pop in '65 was quite wonderful. But then we seemed to lose our way again, and there was nothing in this town except Greasy Bear, who were an English northern working class Grateful Dead. They were the Grateful Dead. They were the Grateful Dead of Manchester in the late '60s, and they kind of, Martin Hannett, the great producer of Factory in the early days, the producer of Joy Division, was the bass player in Greasy Bear, etc., etc. And Greasy Bear became, as it were, Alberto's. That's when I arrived back in town. That was it. There was Alberto's, there was the Sad Cafe boys, most of whom played with Dougie James Soul Train at the local clubs. And it was a pretty, you know, there wasn't a lot happening. At which point the Sex Pistols came and played.
When did you first hear the word punk?
Don't remember when I heard the word punk. A friend of mine, a junkie for university, in January 3rd, 1976, gave me a copy of Horses by Patti Smith. 3 weeks later, it was announced in the press that I was doing a television program that summer called So It Goes, and people who knew me from my local TV programs in the Northwest, 2 people wrote to me. One was a man called Howard Trafford, later known as Howard Devoto, saying there's a group called the Sex Pistols. They come from London. They're playing Manchester in 3 months on June the 2nd or something at the Lesser Peter Hall. You must come. And and the third thing I got was this battered cardboard envelope with a battered copy of a group that I'd never heard of, because I just liked, you know, the Dead and the Airplane Man. There's a battered copy of an album by a group I'd never heard of called the New York Dolls, with a letter from a school kid from Stretford called Stephen Morrissey saying, why aren't there more groups like this around? So these three things...
We're going to have to cut out here, Tony.
No, you've had enough, we've had enough.
No, you've broken the world record. We've got 2 videos.
Oh.
We'll be back. Thank you.